For the next few weeks, we're just going to keep on building layers. So each of these videos is going to be me working through all of the pieces all at once, trying to define the spaces, trying to cover up the things that are too busy, adding texture and pattern, and basically just going back and forth, spiraling in and working on the pieces and then spiraling out and looking at what I like and what I don't like and working according to that. Here I chose the navy blue because the pattern's already navy and I wanted to make the pattern be less important in that area while also adding contrast to the balloon to make it pop out. It's always a good idea to add color in more than one place, so I've brought the navy blue over to the side. It's watercolor, so as I work with it, it becomes more and more diluted. And so it's a lighter version, but it's still bringing it all the way through the piece. Now I'm adding a thick layer of acrylic paint to create space between the basket and the hot air balloon. I'm adding lines with the oil pastel to divide the space. Oil pastel works as an excellent barrier. Using the inspiration of a photo reference, I started to create the patterns and make the balloons more detailed, as they are the thing that I want emphasized in the piece. They are the focal point, so they need a lot more attention, a lot more pattern and detail. But I didn't copy the photo reference exactly. I'm not going to use the same colors. I'm just using the pattern and then I'm done with the photo reference. So that's the difference between copying a photo reference and using the photo reference for some design inspiration. You'll see by the end of this that the balloons turn out nothing like the photo reference that I used to have an idea for the pattern. I'm going to add some sewing here, but it is a lot easier to poke the holes before you start sewing, especially with this thick watercolor paper. It is really tedious to sew in because it is so thick. So having something that you can poke holes in before beginning will help make the job a lot easier. Now I'm pre-wetting the surface and going to add some drops of watercolor. You'll see how the oil pastel works as a barrier here. The biggest thing that people do with watercolor is they over mix it or they play with it too much. So in this, all I'm doing is pulling some of the color down so that it gets all the way to the edges, and then I'm going to leave it alone. So if you're using watercolor, pre-wet the space, move it around to where you need it, and then let it do its own thing. That is something that will help make the watercolor turn out better. Once again, I'm bringing that aqua color down through the piece. So I started at the top and also put some at the bottom. I'm sorry that my camera angle cut it off a little bit. Sometimes with so much going on, there's pattern, there's collage, that the piece just needs areas of rest. So I am simplifying. I'm bringing some of that really light blue-green color, and I'm just kind of giving the piece some areas to breathe. So if you're wondering why I started to do these dark lines through the balloon, there was two reasons. One is the background is pretty light. Most of the background is in a lighter color. So to get that balloon to pop out and to be noticed, I needed to add some contrast. So I added the dark. And I also had some lines already drawn, but they're really hard to see where the lines are. But I just looked at the piece. I saw the form that was already there, and then I added the dark colors to it. Now I'm doing the opposite with this piece, number 2. I'm keeping the balloons light and I'm adding some contrast to the background with that dark navy blue. I don't rinse my brush until I'm using a different color that is warm. So if I go from a cool color to a warm color and I don't want to make it a neutral gray or brown, then that's when I rinse my brush. But because the blue and the green are close to each other on the color wheel, I am going to expect that they're going to mix well. They're going to play well. But if I start adding this coral color, those colors are not going to mix beautifully. They're going to make mud. So I'm trying to keep my warm colors and my cool colors separate from each other. One of the easiest ways to help guide the process and help me make decisions is using what's already there. So I'm defining the space around this hot air balloon, and I'm using a pink acrylic over this pink watercolor because it's already there. I'm letting the piece guide me and help me to know what to do next. So I see a need where the hot air balloon isn't popping out, and then I look at what's already there and I add to it. I'm drawing contour lines here. It's easy to draw contour lines, just follow the edge of the shape. You'll notice that I've done this several times, but I always use the stencil and then I flip it over and I print off the stencil to get the rest of the wet paint off. I like the push and pull. I like the using the stencil and then using the negative space. So I like to get both the positive and negative space from the stencil. I feel like stencils are very underutilized and you can really do a lot with a stencil. Of all of the hot air balloons, this one is one of my least favorite. I come back to it and I think I should have made the hot air balloon more interesting instead of making it so perfectly hot air balloon like. And now I'm working on a different one and I actually love how this one turned out. I love the rich depth of color that this one ends up having in the end. And I think it's because I started with so much color and material right in the hot air balloons area, and then I was able to come back in and add several layers. So it just gave it so much more depth of color and texture, and it is actually kind of a perfect looking hot air balloon also, but it's not perfectly center in the on the page like the other one. It feels like it's more moving through the air, and so I like that one. It has more depth to it. This hot air balloon was really hard for me because I started with a shape and with colors and textures that I instantly loved. And so I had a really hard time adding to it because I felt like it was taking away from what I already loved, the simplicity and the light colors and the textures and the pattern. And so it was hard to lose all of that, but the show had to go on, and it was not part of a hot air balloon series without making the hot air balloon come out. And so I had to let that go. I had to let go of the attachment and paint over it to make it what it needed to be. There is so much happening in the center of this piece that I needed to calm it down. So I'm going to use the colors once again that are already there and paint over those patterns to simplify the area. I'm going to use some hot pink here and bring it down over the purple pattern and smooth out that background and blend it so that it can be less busy. Another trick that I like to do is I do like to have the foreground and the background color bleed into each other. So I'm going to bring some more navy blue onto the balloon where the background has the navy blue also. I feel like that makes the subject matter incorporate better into the piece and really become a whole together. So that's it for today. We're just going to keep on working on these pieces. I know it feels like you're not making a lot of ground when you're working in a series like this, and it can be less gratifying because week after week you're working on the same pieces, but all of a sudden you're going to have 10 pieces done and it's going to feel amazing. So come back next week. Thank you for watching.